Good evening. We're picking up where we left off on Friday. Also, thank you for the hydration and congratulations on being first. Surprisingly, none of my pets are dead. Consequently, I'm not actually sure what my plan should be. If memory serves, I was kind of like going through the blue area that I've forgotten the name of. So I will continue to do that. At least hypothetically. I might just get lost and quit the game. You never know. I probably won't, but like, I never like to presume that anything's a guarantee. Yeah, it'd be a bit of a shame to beat the boss, what? It'd be a bit of a shame to quit the game at this point. On the other hand, it would be very funny. It's like, yeah, I got like 95% of the way through, decided I didn't like it. It's like, at that point, you really can't, like, object. Like, yeah, no, she gave it a shot. Truly can't say she didn't. I'm now level 14. As tends to happen when somebody levels up at level 13. It's because this has happened to you at least twice without being aware the game is nearly over. I mean, so like the way that I kind of like view that sort of thing, the entire point of a game, obviously, is to have fun. And once it stops being fun, you shouldn't feel any obligation to keep playing it. I say this having, like, toughed out a bunch of games that I really didn't enjoy toughing out. And rather than making me a hypocrite, rather, it's the lesson that I've learned from doing that. Sometimes you just have to say, you know what? No, I'm not doing this. I appear to have been poisoned. Unfortunately for the poison, it's a nerd, and I'm just gonna get rid of it. Textbook. And I got a halberd for that. Jinx, you 2 both owe me a soda. I'm gonna go pick up some more blue essence from the shaft. Given that my pets aren't dead, I should probably have one out. And that's why. like how I consistently get lost on the way to the chef. Like, you would think that by now I would remember that I've got to drop down. Oh right, I'm friends with goblins now. I guess that extends to all goblins. I could probably afford the teleport to chef item. True. Yeah, alright, it's only 200. Normally I'd be like, oh, but like I can just run back and it's no big deal, but like... It's not that expensive at this point. Pull out the dragon, because there's a bunch of stuff in here that I'm pretty sure is immune to the skull. There's also some stuff that I'm pretty sure is immune to the dragon, but like... whatever. Okay, I do have the black key. I should be going around looking for the black chests. I need a signed certificate. I forget where to get one of those. I think I needed the picture, which I've already got. And then there was Sword in the Stone, which I forget where the thing for that is. I'll find it though. Perhaps I should have contemplated getting some green essence as well. Oh, hey look, 30 green essence. Never mind, I'm good. Yeah, there's a challenge portal. That's the thing with the guy. Where I need the shield. The fact that this is like a wide horizontal section with seemingly nothing on this end makes me think that there's like something there. Potentially related to like getting at that challenge icon thing. We shall put the dragon away. I do not wish my my dragon to be skewered. You would think that it'd be something here. Oh, they ganked me. That was rude. I got nothing personneled by a guy with a poison spear. This is fine. Also, yeah, like, as you said, the fact that it's like not just a cleanse, it's a freeze. That is pretty cool. Okay, I forget the sequence here. But like my excuse is that it's been a few days, so... just gonna pick at random and see what happens. Minion card, bone, bone, bone window. I think it was topmost left. I will take your word on that. Alright, yeah, you know what? Yeah, let's bust out the notepad. I open it, the first thing I see is my notes from Factorio. I was calculating ratios before I realized that I don't need to calculate ratios, I just need to make more. Okay, so skull bone bone leads to skull bone skull. Yeah, I know it'll help. That's why I'm doing it. Bone 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 leads to bone bone skull. I'll just make a note at each one and go down the list. Oh well, there's the certification of Minion Hood. Oh, the certification's different? I guess I need the certification for the Minion card. So skull skull bone leads to skull skull skull. I should probably double check the dialogue on skull skull just in case getting that thing wasn't the end of it. Nope, that was in fact the end of it. He won't even talk to me anymore. Which is fine by me. Okay, so bone skull skull leads to skull bone bone. What? Okay, so skull 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 is... or bone 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 is done, and then that goes to bone bone skull. This guy also just won't talk to me anymore. That said, I'll grab the other notes while I can. I'll just make a note of where I am in the chain now. Skull bone skull leads to skull skull bone. Skull bone skull bone bone skull. By the end of this, neither skull nor bone is going to be a real word in my head. Like, you know that thing where, like, you say a word, like, way too many times in a row and it stops sounding like a real word? I sense that that's going to happen. Bone bone skull leads to... bone skull bone. Is this better or worse than the Zootopia, the DMV that hired a sloth? I say that this is worse, because, like, at least with the sloth, you go there, and, like, you sit with the guy, and it's gonna take a while, but, like, he will get it done. Eventually. With this, you have to, like, run around and, like, introduce a ton of points of failure. Okay, so bone, skull, bone... goes into bone, skull, skull. Okay, so I'm currently looking for bone, bone, skull. Assuming that I'm parsing my own notes correctly. which is a bold assumption. I've never been a great note taker. It's actually something that I've been, like, considering, like, learning how to do. Because, like, you can actually, like, learn to take better notes. I just haven't sat down and done it. Right, I got the official seal from Bone Bone Skull. So now I go to Bone Skull Bone. Legislative approval. That leads into Bone Skull Skull, which is that one down there. And 200. That one leads into Skull Bone Bone. That one leads into Skull Bone Skull. Also, part of the reason I'm doing this, it's not because of the reward. I know that I can't use it, it's because it's a quest in my log and I want to get rid of it. Signed AN200. So Skull Bone Skull leads into Bone Bone Skull. It's Skull Bone Skull. Leads into Bone Bone Skull. Did I take my notes wrong? I might have taken my notes wrong. This is probably fine. Skull, Skull, Bone. Skull, Skull, Skull. So that's correct. There's only so many windows left. This is fine. I mean, that's got me most of the way. E10 purchase certificate. Signed purchase certificate. The certificate of the... I almost got mad. Finally, you've obtained certificate. I pleased, I give Bonebreaker. Okay, so it's an AoE maze. Nice. The fact that the slippery hands thing doesn't just get rid of my thing, but also makes it so that, like, I have to reassign the quick key. That's a little bit bothersome. Also, come to think of it, I did level up, so, like, I can do a little bit of extra frost. And staff. Maybe that'll be enough extra damage to one-shot these guys. It wasn't. I do not want to be carrying a staff while a jester can see me. There's a black chest here. Not gonna lie, surprised I dodged all that. I thought I could hit it at least once. Like that, yes. I need 5 more shield pieces and I can get alchemy. So on the one hand, not having my staff is a substantial DPS loss. On the other hand, the time to kill is actually identical. It takes 2 spell casts to kill those guys, with or without the staff, so it doesn't actually matter. I feel like time to kill is one of those things that, like... you don't really start saying until you're, like, a certain level of nerd, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the average person doesn't think about games like that, you know what I mean? You hate low time to kill in multiplayer games? For me, it's actually the other way around. I dislike super fast time to kills. Well, actually, it depends. Like, sometimes it's fun, other times it's Counter-Strike, which is not at all a game that I enjoy on any level. It's like, oh, I turned a corner and I'm dead instantly. And now I have to sit out the rest of the round, which is like 20 minutes of people camping. It's like, I politely decline. Not fun for me. I'll leave that to, like, other people. Yeah, I generally prefer games where, like, killing somebody's a bit more involved, but also, I don't like games where, like, it's a slog to kill somebody once you have them dead to rights. Which is actually my problem with a lot of, like, MMO, PvP. It's like you've outmaneuvered somebody, you've got them dead to rights, and then they just have, like, 100,000 hit points, and you have to hit them 50 times. And there's just, like, no way around it. Weird that those things are upside down, but that's okay. Just need 3 more black shields. One's over there. But yeah, like, for example, I used to play World of Warcraft, and I never enjoyed the PvP in that game. Because it was somehow both types of... It was somehow both, like, really slow and really fast at the same time. Because, like, the amount of gear that you had actually influenced how strong your character was in player versus player combat. And the gear that, like, you got from player versus player combat specifically made you, like, extra strong in terms of, like, resisting player damage or overcoming that same resistance. Which means that whenever there's, like, a new, like, season or whatever, if you don't grind a full set within, like, the first 3 days, everybody that you would possibly be fighting is basically invincible. Because everybody who's not going to do PvP doesn't have that set. So it's like you try to go in, and it's like... literally, you're doing like a fifth of the damage that they are. They're taking like half as many actions as you, they're chunking you for like a third of your health bar each time. It's just not fun. The part of that is just, I think, MMOs in general just aren't a good place for PvP. I just never played an MMO with, like, PvP that felt good. And before anybody says it, yes, I played Guild Wars too. There's just too much latency and not enough, like, feedback, I feel. Okay, that one I'm a little bit upset by. That was my good staff. I'm gonna have to go get that one unmorphed. Luckily I know how to do that, it's just annoying. Silver Dagger of Snake Slaying. And I fell. Well, the good news is, with my staff transmuted into a squeaky toy hammer, I don't have to worry about my staff getting transmuted into a squeaky toy hammer. It's kind of like, you can't fire me, I quit. It's like, okay, cool, what can you do to me now? Not much. And then I slipped and fell off like a silly. Whenever I see, like, a squeaky toy hammer, I think of Amy Rose from Sonic the Hedgehog. Where just at some point, the developers decided that that was going to be your signature weapon. This is interesting looking. Suddenly, 8-bit nightmare. This is literally just the 8-bit nightmare from Bloodstained. Alright, I'll go with this. Oh no. I think that perhaps I should let my skull do work. And or maybe transmute my thing back. I don't care if it's not actually called 8-bit nightmare. I'm calling it 8-bit nightmare in the notes. There's a stone there. Hamalek. Not sure if that's like our memorial to a real person, or... Okay. Interesting. Oh, these things take damage. Maze of Gallia Serpents? I'm not familiar with this, I'm sorry. Primary inspiration for this game? Neat. You might not know what it is, but it's cool that it's inspiring. Oh, hello. Gat-chan. Presumably a pet? Gat-chan's antennae fire rays that paralyze their target. That sounds probably really, really good. Yeah, that seems exceptionally good. Alright, let's go to the catacombs and unsqueaky toy my hammer. I don't want to be most busted pet? Nice. Fix morphed items up here, okay. I want to say it was 100 favors to do it, so it'll basically take all of them, but I should be able to do it. Worst case scenario, I will simply purchase another staff. I do have money. That was almost a mistake. True, I do need 100 Divine Favors for Sword in the Stone. It might be worth my time to just, farm them back up after this. I wouldn't need that many, and in rooms like this one, I can get quite a few. I do need 666 of everything for a challenge, but that's not a super high priority at present. Hey God, do me a solid, please. Thank you very kindly. I'm not religious, but if I was inclined to participate, I wonder if I would be brave enough to open a prayer with, "Hey God, do me a solid, would ya?" Mods can ban this guy, and he gets smitten by Holy Light. I've actually seen some people in D&D 5th edition, where warlocks, unlike in earlier editions, get their powers by forming pacts with entities. I've seen some people play it so that their warlock is basically like a streamer. That is like, in exchange for their powers, they're like relaying like their senses like some like outer god type entity. And so they're constantly like making comments to chat and like asking chat for donations. It's like you might actually see like, "Hey chat, can we ban this guy?" And then like, that's the incantation for banishment. The fun thing about games where you more or less make up the rules as you go is that you can make things up as you go. Yeah, I will happily take a fairy thing that inflicts paralyze. Paralyzed fairy, more like fairy lies. That's a terrible pun, I'm sorry. Even by my standards, that's not good enough. How long does that paralysis last? Pretty long. I want to say that the other essence was on the east side of this one. Or the east side of the room below this one. Definitely appreciating this thing. Alright, just need one more black chest. Don't want anything to transmute it again, so let's get out of there. I'm so used to the sewers that like I wade through water like that and I expect to like have a bunch of leeches attach themselves to my ankles. Make no mistake, I'm glad that they're not doing that. But I do expect it. Hey Merlin, Excalibur please? This must be the sword Excalibur. I'll try to take it. Nothing. It's stuck. No way I can release it from the stone. Reading Merlin. I see that I have enough divine favor to be canonized, and here it is, the mini picture. Fantastic, fantastic. Let's see. First name, Arthur. Surname, Pent-Dragon. Address, 15 Johnson Street. Camelot, of course. Camelot. Zip code? Well, I don't remember exactly. Lad, you should know the zip code. Let's see. M-Mail? M-Mail? Yes, lad, the address of Magic Mail. Ah, yes, of course. Arthur@Camelot.org. Arthur@Camelot.org. Do you wish to receive free information about legendary weapons and armors? No, I don't want to have the Magic Mail account full of spam. Perfect, the card is done. Enjoy your sword. Straight up Excalibur. Alright. 26% extra experience, 10% crit with swords. Inflicts additional magic damage and increases the wielder's gained experience. That sounds like it's probably reasonably powerful. Wrong button, but it doesn't matter. Ultimate sword. Swords are boring. I mean, I like swords. Hey, last chest. But fair. I missed a chandelier. Or candelabra. You know, it just occurred to me that the existence of candelabras implies the existence of candelaboobs. No notes. True, so some swords are cooler than others. But generally, like, ow, ow, ow. Thank you for the apples. Oh, no, you don't. No, 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 not that one, not that one. My pet just saved my staff. Thank you, pet. Gat-chan. Alright, so I've done just about everything there is to do. Let's head back up to the pure vessel room, actually, since I got all the shield bits that I need. You want to get a chance hard to be biblically accurate? Is she from something? I presume, like, from the game that you say that, like, inspired this one? From Dr. Slump? Oh, gotcha. I know about Dr. Slump, I've never seen it. I think I've read like a chapter of Dr. Slump to see if it was my thing, and it wasn't my thing. Ave, Spirit of Protection, I bring you the items as requested. Fantastic. Now I will transfer my knowledge to you through the power of this artifact. Let the magic of protection cover you against your foes. Let runes written in the past become readable to your eyes. Oh, I thought this was alchemy. Goes to show how good my memory is. The magic of protection has been added to your character sheet. You are now able to cast spells of protection and increase your skill of protection magic when gaining levels. Combat protection. Absorbs 1/3 of the damage of melee attacks. That's basically 50% extra HP. Not bad. Against melee specifically, but like for a first level spell, can't really object to that one too hard. I wonder if the reason these things drop blue magic essence is because you are like specifically meant to use like that spell in particular to get through it. Or if it's just like serendipitous. I do see the guardian door there. There is a room up top that I haven't gotten all the lights in. So before I wrap up, I'll do that. At least one chandelier in here. Candelabra, rather. It's probably in that one that goes up. I've been thinking too much about the Amazing Digital Circus, I think. Because every time I see those chesters, I think, oh, Pomni. And I've lit all the lights in the halls. Yeah, finale on YouTube in like 3 or 4 days. Looking forward to that. At first, I was a little concerned that like, oh no, because I'm not seeing it in theaters, what if somebody spoils it? But from what I've heard, apparently going to see it in theaters is actually like the distinctly worse experience. Because apparently a bunch of kids think that Digital Circus is for kids, so they show up and they make a ridiculous racket in theaters. So it's like, you know what? Yeah, let's not go to the theaters with the children. An invoker? He's here. What can you tell me of this critter? Here dwells Mediox. His power is so incredible that he petrifies his victims just by looking at them. Petrifies with his eyes? Let me guess, does this Mediox have lots of snakes on his head? He does. How did you know? He must be the brother of Medusa. I will do what Perseus did, separate his head from his body. Body? Mediox has no body, he is just a head hidden behind an impenetrable silver helmet. Listen to me, stupid human. His power resides in his central eye. You must avoid his petrifying gaze at any price. If you feel his gaze approaching, turn away and you'll be saved. There's nothing else. His snakes spit a poison that kills quickly. Have at hand all the anti-venom potions you can carry. You're going to need them. So, no looking into the eye. Understood. Come on, let's go. I fear I'll never return to my castle. Okay, so have antidote at hand. Don't look at the gaze attack, that's pretty standard stuff. Don't know if the fairy can paralyze him. Oh, that's cool. Well, the fairy can just die instantly, alright. I'm not sure what these things will do to me on contact, but I'm pretty confident that I don't want it. Oh, they just hurt a little. Okay. We can do this. To the tower. You defeated the 7th Guardian and obtained the key to the tower. Oh, alright then. That wasn't too bad. The shotgun continues to reign supreme. We're gonna take a 5-minute break here. Please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom, anything that would take you about 5 minutes. I will see you shortly. I return. I'm like 30 seconds late. Not for any of the reasons that you might think, but because I was texting somebody over the break, and just for some reason the autocorrect would not let me say what I wanted to say. So I had to type each letter like 3 times. Oh well, these things happen sometimes. And the tower's over here, and I think that this side has a keyhole for the tower key, so... I will find out promptly one way or another. This definitely feels very final. Like, I can't imagine there being, like, more than 1 or 2 more zones left in the entire game. And with a name like Tower... I don't know, Tower just has a final aura to it. Hey, how's it going? To strange places your steps takes you. Ah, the Hustler Oracle. Funny your words are. But what are you doing here? Aren't you too far from the mine? Your fate here is chosen. Huh? 3 objects these chests contain. Only one you may choose. To a different fate each object will take you. You must wisely choose. And how can I choose one? What are the fates? What clues do I have? Only fate knows the fates. So in other words, you have no idea. What a crap oracle. And how do I open them? The key of fate you need. Have it you can for just 200 coins. And what about if I cut your head off and take it for free? For just 100 coins I could leave it. Okay deal. You're lucky I hate violence. Here it is, your money, old 6-penny hustler. Space period. Now give me my key. Here it is. Only once can you use it. Remember you must. Choose a chest, open it, and keep its content until the end of the game. The item you choose will define the end of the game. Destiny key. And I don't know what any of these are going to be. Which means that I have choice paralysis and I don't want to pick one. I mean, I guess there's just... I can either look it up or I could just go for it. It's totally fine to pick at random. Okay, Fox has 3 letters, so I'm gonna pick the 3rd chest. Foxes are number 1, so I'm gonna pick the leftmost chest. Foxes do what they want, so I'm gonna pick the middle chest. Okay, so out of those, I think Horrendous Death is probably, like, the least awful one. It's like, at least it's over quickly. It's better than Agony or Slavery. I salute you again. You are admirable. Your powers grow with every step that you take. Horrendous Death probably isn't a weapon. I mean, I do have a shotgun. I can just, like, turn it around. You are admirable. Your powers grow with every step you take. Yeah, but the enemies get tougher, you know? By the way, what is this place? You are in the Forgotten Tower. Here dwell spirits and lamenting ghosts. Really? Then are you a lamenting ghost? This is not my place. I'm here just to warn you that you must be careful with them, as they are invisible to the eye and only the divine magic of light can harm them. invisible, then if I can't see them, how can I kill them? You can harm them even if you can't see them, only if you use the divine magic of light. Hey, thanks for the advice. It's a pleasure to help you. It's a pleasure to help you. I cannot stand that lamentable entity. He might be lamentable, Zero, but at least he hasn't been captured and turned into a slave like you. Potion of Sea Invisibility. Presumably with this, I just drop down. Oh, I could do that. Oh, awesome. Okay, we take those. How many elimination scrolls do I have? Probably a lot. What? Wait, desist? Can the Spirit of Light hurt them without help? I might have to go restock on Divine Favor. Oh, they steal... Oh no. They steal weapons from me. That's not okay. Okay, I think See Invisibility was like an alteration spell. I don't think I have that spell. I also don't have that many Divine Favors. Thank you for the hydration. The See Invisible Potion was blue, I think. Oh, what if I've only got 2 of them? What if I need them more later? It probably is worth my time, if those are going to be like a recurring thread, to go back to the catacombs and like farm some favors. Okay, I just straight up don't have enough Divine Favors to kill them. And I guess the Spirit won't target it if I don't have visibility on it. I'm going to check to see if I have more, I'm gonna check to see if I have more See Invisibility things in the bank, which I might. I don't recall if I put potions down. I think I dropped all of my potions a while back and the Javas stole them. Yeah, so that sucks. So I could either farm Javas, I could go to the catacombs, or I could double check a vendor that sells alteration spells and see if they sell see invisibility. And if I've got enough spare skill points to just learn it. And I like that last one the best because it makes it like a thing that I can just do, rather than a thing that I can run out of. Meaningfully run out of. Oh yes, I keenly remember what happened to my potions, don't you worry. That's why I'm saying, like, I might have to farm Javas, because they're the ones who stole all of them. Assuming that they got stolen, it didn't just despawn, which is a possibility that I'd rather not consider. If I can get it as a spell, then it can't be stolen from me, so that's kind of like my preferred way of approaching this. I keep forgetting what keys I have things on. Because having that slime was just personal. Imagine if it turned Gatchan into a squeaky toy hammer. That would suck. Okay, see invisible, level 9 mental. I have 10 points. Just basically barely enough, but we take those. I can also grab other mental spells now that I've actually invested into it. They're not selling any other mental spells, but that's fine. That's literally just Ulquiorra's eye from Bleach. Like, that's actually just Ulquiorra. Yeah, checking the shop in the area that actually has mental spells, which I think is over here. This is lab, not library, whatever. Maybe there's some mental stuff here anyway. Ogre's Strength, Poison Reduction, Bright Mind, reduces casting time for all spells, that's good for DPS, may as well grab that. Heal allies, Telekinesis. We take those. I've been a mage this entire playthrough. It's about time that I learned a spell other than shotgun, I guess. Even if they're not for the discipline that I've been spending most of my time in. You remember dropping Bleach when I got to the Bound Arc because you were like, with vampires and everything era? I think that I dropped Bleach around the time that he went to, like, the Soul King's palace. Like, not long after the Fullbring arc. Like, of note, I thought that Dayside was the end of Bleach, and I thought that it was a really, really good ending. And then it kept going, and I was like, what? Like, I'll never be the one to say that, like, oh, like, this series should have just ended, but, like... Or, like, this thing doesn't deserve to exist or anything like that, which is not what I'm saying here, but it's like... I feel like if Bleach had ended right at the end of the Dayside arc, they could have kept going with the setting. But, like, the story of, like, the original Bleach could have been done, and it was fine. It was good, even. It took everything that was kind of, like, very silly about Bleach and, like, justified it and, like, resolved it satisfyingly and tied a nice little neat bow on it. And then it was like, oh, actually, Ichigo got all of his powers back and then some because he's Ichigo, and it's like, ugh. There goes, like, literally all of, like, the character payoff from Dayside. Like, the entire point of that arc was that Ichigo was, like, even though he was so ridiculously powerful, he didn't actually care about the power. And so he was willing to give it up in order to, like, achieve, like, an important goal. And then it's like, oh yeah, but then he got his powers back. It's like, losing your powers permanently is, like, a big deal. Losing your powers for, like, a week or two is a vacation. Oh well, it is what it is. But yeah, I kind of lost interest not long after all that. I mean, honestly, the Quincy in general, I didn't really... Like, conceptually, I wasn't really a fan of the Quincy. And it's literally for the same reason that, like, Soul Society's not a fan of them in canon. Because it's like... Take, like, the soul of, like, a dead, innocent person. So, like, if anything that happens to that person is, like, hollow or Shinigami related, it might take an absolutely unreasonably long time, but eventually they'll probably inevitably end up, like, actually being released back into the cycle of reincarnation. Like, they'll actually get to go to, like, an afterlife, they'll actually get to be, like, reborn. If a Quincy pops you, you just cease to exist. Like, that's horrific. Like, that's horrific to, like, the highest degree possible. Like, every fodder hollow that, like, Ishida, I think his name was, ever, like, killed on screen is an innocent person who was victimized by a hollow and then had their eternity extinguished for what was essentially convenience. It's like, that's kind of messed up. Like, don't get me wrong, aesthetically, the Quincy stuff was all awesome, but, like, lore-wise, it was horrific, and I would not want to share a setting with it. Like, imagine being in that setting, right? And it's like... You pass on, you move on to the afterlife, and you're just like... Oh, I can't wait to talk to my grandmother again. You know, I'm gonna tell her everything that, like, you know, happened to me. And then it's like, oh yeah, her, she was deleted. It's like, what? Why? Probably was just easier. Like, I would not be happy. I would be a very displeased fox. Also, I should probably use that as the invisibility spell that I picked up. What type of essence was it? Golden essence. To the chef. It's a smidge more expensive than blue, but I can live with that. Yeah, also, while we're ranting about Quincy, it's like, so like, the flip side of things that's supposed to like make them more sympathetic is it's like, okay, so like, the Shinigami go and they like, genocide all the Quincy after asking them politely to stop destroying souls for all of eternity. Which, you know, normally I would not advocate, like, you know, the, that sort of action, but like, under those conditions, I think it's genuinely justified. Especially because they themselves, the Shinigami, are the arbiters of the afterlife, so it's like, okay, yes, they're killing people, but like, unlike the Quincy, everybody that they kill is just going to show up in Soul Society. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like, it's a bit of a dick move, but it's like... The damage that they did was, like, preventative in nature. Rather than being, like, a permanent extinguishing of the Quincy souls. It's like the Quincy souls, the things that, like, would last in the long run, were ultimately totally fine. It's like if you're, I don't know, like, throwing freshwater turtles into the ocean and somebody, like, tackles you. It's like, ow, that was very rude, but it's like, no, seriously, I had to stop you. You were doing something horrible. And it's like, now you can recover from it because you have not been put into a space where into a state where recovery is impossible. Yeah, as opposed to what the Quincy's do to people for just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Anyway, Bleach should have ended at Dayside. Also, yeah, going by shortcut door saturation, I look pretty done with the game, for the most part. I slightly fear that I will not be done with the game by the end of tonight, which by itself isn't that big of a deal. But then there's a non-zero chance that, like, on Friday, it's like 15 minutes of Unepic, and then it's like, well, what do I do now for the rest of the night? So, like, hopefully it doesn't come to that. Presumably that was the tower key. Yeah, I tend to get a little bit worked up whenever a setting has like a mechanic. Oh yes, we're gonna permanently, like... That is a ghost building Excalibur. That feels like it shouldn't be a thing. Like, in the settings, like, yes, souls are explicitly real. They can be, like, quantified and, like, measured and everything. And also sometimes, like, they just get destroyed and that's okay. It's like, no, it's not. What are you on? I'm on spikes. 15 minutes of Unepic and 105 minutes of Blender. I mean, conceivably that is an option. Though it would probably actually be more like 105 minutes of Unity. Because right now most of what I'm doing is trying to figure out how like certain components work in Unity, because the documentation for them is not enough to answer the questions that I have regarding it. Because the things that I'm trying to use are... I'm using them outside of like the most basic scenarios imaginable, which means that like YouTube videos and such don't cover it at all. It's like the same 3 super simple things you can do, just repeat it over and over on YouTube. At least as far as I looked. Maybe there's a channel with like 12 total views that contains all the knowledge I could ever ask for. And it will simply never see the light of day because YouTube. Like all shenanigans, that ghost was paralyzed. How can you steal something while paralyzed? Open that door again. Specifically, if anybody's curious, I'm trying to figure out how to use the character joint component, which basically causes 2 objects with physics enabled to act like they are a ball and socket joint. So like anchor to a point, but then can like twist around within that point, and then also like around within a certain like constrained radius. That's the character joint. And I'm trying to use it for hair. Because VRM spring bones don't quite work the way I want them to, even though they're meant to be for hair, more or less. Alright, this one with the spikes intimidates me a little. I'm gonna take a different route. Hopefully the autosave puts me somewhere else. Well, these guys are, very creature-shaped. Ow. Imagine doing this without the light spirit. That would suck. We need the Ghostbusters in here? Arguably, that's me. Hey, more potion of the invisible. Cheeky. I wonder if there's a hidden passage here. No, there's not. At least my light spirit can ironically see in the dark. Rude. Noctis umbra, zorak kora dormash. Axeret tros korak o tros lordem, kora hartlosh yoresh zerna kadarkosh. Zorash kosh morak. Tomash koyok. Kurt norek humano shomorak. Dorgo merosh hiak. Yorok. What are you saying? Val, have you lost your mind or were you talking in your sleep? What? Did you hear me? How's that possible? Jeez, of course I heard you. You started to talk in a strange language that sounds like Jabba the Hutt crossed with those necromancers. It is the black tongue. Ah, yeah, my tongue also turns black when I eat licorice, you know? But the fact is, you suddenly started to talk funny. You are a meddler. That was a private conversation. It was no concern of yours. Were you talking to somebody? Of course, your telepathy. You were receiving orders telepathically. And what did they say? This is not your business. But they know that I do not control this body. Great, awesome, eh? At least you won't be exiled or melted or whatever it is. That is true. Wow, pal. I'm happy for you. You were happy for my fortune? But I am your enemy. But you consider me also as a friend, like Magneto and Xavier, right? Yeah, you're finally catching on. Is this the finale, or... By all the captains of Star Trek, what place is this? We are in the Tower of Mages. Here, you will have to use your wits to overcome the sorcerers. Above all, destroy the floating eyes. They cast glowing spells that will hinder your movement. Moreover, you must be careful of the blue sorcerers. Their power resides in frost. Do not get too close, as their frozen breath will freeze you. Zira, all this help. Just like that? No tricks? Not this time. Why this drastic change? You don't want me death anymore? Why are you treating me like a friend? Nonsense, I'm just carrying out my... Your what? Nothing. Forget what I said. Your orders? Is that it? Are you just carrying out your orders? The telepathic conference call from a minute ago was to command you to help me. I did hear the word Humano in there. Yes. Wow, why? I must take you before the Great Lord. Are you serious? Why? I do not know the reason. Maybe he wants to kill you in person. You can consider it a great honor to die before such a powerful being as him. So your master wants you to take me to him, and where is he exactly? In the top of this tower. Well, Zira, let's not keep your boss waiting. Okay, so Mage Tower is endgame. There's a little bit more tower though, so... I'll see what I can do about finishing this one up first. Cheeky Scroll of Elimination. When I was a child, I was terrified of Black Widows. Not because they posed any reasonable risk to me, but just because, like, I learned that they existed and they terrified me. Like, oh no, what if a spider bites me and I die? Basically that. These spiders are the experience farm. They do seem like they give a decent chunk. Incidentally, I'm not farming them on purpose, I'm just like trying to get everything falling off of things, aggroing spiders. Let's see what is up top. the shop, potentially. Oh, desist. Yeah, black widows are not the most poisonous spider in the world, but specifically, I think it was a choose-your-own-adventure book. Had a plot point where there was like a... There was like a theme park that you were like going through, and part of like the draw of the theme park was that there was like an emerald hidden somewhere in the theme park that was like worth a ton of money. But then when you find it, like, some crooked like park director guy who doesn't want to like actually let a guest potentially find it and like have the money has like put a black widow in the box. And if you reach for the emerald, the black widow bites you and you almost die. But you actually sue the park and get way more money than the emerald was worth, so it's actually arguably the best ending in the book. Yeah, specifically in the book, in the Choose Your Own Adventure one, it was like, if this spider bites you, decent odds that you die, so you should probably just like leave and not touch it. And as a child, I was just like, oh, so like, someday I might just encounter a spider that could bite and kill me. Because I was a child and I didn't really understand the idea of like artistic liberty at the time. Yeah, now that I'm an adult, I am substantially less scared of spiders. To the extent where whenever I find one in my apartment, I usually don't mess with it. And that approach has been paying off because my building is roach infested ever since a few spiders moved in and I didn't bother them. They have not shown up to bother me, and I have not had a roach problem in my apartment specifically. And I'm very okay with things continuing as they are. Yeah, brown recluses are like genuinely scary. That's a spider that actually can kill you. It helps that, like, spiders actively, like, don't want to, like, encounter, like, you know, humanoids. So, like, as terrifying as of a statement as it is, spiders will, like, learn your schedule and work around it, specifically so that you don't ever have to see them. They are basically the ideal, like, medieval-era servants. They're like, yeah, we're doing all the real work, but like, we'll just exist in the background, for your sake. Oh, now there's two, magic types. Oh, katanas. Excellent. Golden breastplate. Heal medium wounds. Once heal at a medium rate. Advanced frostbolt. Invokes a prayer that affects all undead. If they're destroyed, their souls redeemed, granting 4 divine favors each. So this is like a screen nuke. This is probably really good for farming divine favors. Mental control could be really nice. Unholy growth. What do you do? Oh, your protection. Alright. This seems really strong. Oh, whoops. I was kind of mashing through. You know, I'd still rather have the specialized one. Oopsie. One extra point and stuff. This thing's pretty chunky. Alright, let's sell some stuff. I'm not gonna hold on to that stuff of red magic any longer. It's like, oh boy, 20% extra damage on, like, my one fire spell. Technically, I could flip this thing for a profit. I bought it for 50, it sells for 80. But, like, I'm not the average person buying Pokemon cards, so I will not be doing that. You always check your headset before you put it on. One morning you put it on, felt something tickling your ear, thought it was a hair, took your headset off and your earwig crawled out. I would scream. Very loud. The worst thing that ever happened to me, kind of like bug related, was not long after I moved into this apartment for the first time. I woke up one morning, I picked up a pair of intimates, and a cockroach crawled out. It was very gross. Like, out of all the potential places that a cockroach might end up, I can think of very few where I would want one less. Like, there is nowhere I want a cockroach, but there's like... Oh wow, that sent me back a ways. But like, there are various magnitudes of like, oh god, no. Not this. Absolutely not. Away with you. I'm going back to the spike pit. Going back to the spike pit was an unwise decision. Your personal PTSD is that you've been to an apple and in the bite you saw half a worm. That is pretty gross. I had something very similar. So back when I used to live with my parents, a snack that I would make sometimes whenever they got pepperoni. Like a log of pepperoni, not like deli slices of pepperoni. Is I would just like... I would cut off a few discs of pepperoni. I would put them on crackers, and I would put cheese on top of that, and then I would just microwave it so that the cheese would like melt down and kind of like glue the pepperoni to the cracker. Like a really nice, really easy little snack slash meal type thing. And one time I did that, and I had about 2 of those, and then I realized that there were like little tiny little, almost transparent worms crawling around on the plate. That had somehow, like... I don't know if they came... Look at skies. I don't know if they came out of the, I don't know if they came out of the pepperoni, out of the cheese, out of the crackers. It was probably the crackers. But they survived being microwaved, and were just sort of like wriggling around on the plate. And... increases your jumping distance. Nice. I have no way to know if I consumed any. I sincerely hope that I didn't, because ew, 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 ew. You know? Ring of Skies. It doesn't actually feel that much of a difference. What was it? I had like fly larvae. Whoops. I encountered fly larvae in my instant oatmeal not terribly long ago. That was unpleasant. Like, I am all for letting, you know, living creatures have a place on this world. But, like, I don't go outside. I let them have their bit, you know? I don't go outside, I don't disturb their bit. In exchange, all I want is for them to not come inside, which is where my bit is. Like, there could be harmony here. Oh, I am definitely jumping higher. Makes this a lot easier. Yeah, that topic of ongoing conversation kind of took a gross turn. I don't like bugs, I'm sorry. Entomologist was never one of my aspirations. For a while, I actually considered, like, getting into, like, veterinary science, that kind of thing. Like, oh, I'll help take care of, like, you know, people's, you know, beloved pets. But then I was like, oh, hold on. I'm not gonna get to, like, play with people's pets, like, while they're having a great time. Like, people are gonna bring their pets to me while their pets are having a miserable time. And I'm gonna have to, like, either deal with a pet that's just, like, absolutely miserable and probably, like, mad at me, or I'm gonna have to give people, like, really bad news, which is, like, even worse. So I will not be doing that. Like, there's upsides and downsides, and I'm not willing to endure the downsides, so the upsides don't draw me in, basically. There's actually a bunch of things like that where, like, there's, like, a given position or, like, job, let's say, that appeals to me on some level, but, like, even though the position itself is, like, conceptually fine, like, the caveats or, like, the lifestyle that go along with it, make it into something that I don't want. Like, for example, baker is actually a thing that I see appeal in. And one of my friends is a baker, so or VTuber model is a baker. It's on me. Y'all know on me. It's like baker kind of comes to mind. And it's like, I could see myself being willing to be a baker. But like, being a baker isn't just like you show up and you bake. Being a baker is like you wake up at 4 a.m. and you show up and you start baking at like 5 a.m. so that the first things can like be ready at 6 a.m. And that kind of like lifestyle around the position is something that is not a good fit for me. Or like truck driver. That's a thing that I could see myself doing. Where like I'm not particularly like, you know, physically powerful or anything. But like I can drive on a road and like listen to an audiobook or whatever. And just like let people like load it or unload it at different like places. Like, the job itself is fine, but, like, the lifestyle around it where it's, like, you're gonna be, like, away from home for, like, weeks at a time makes what would otherwise be a good position into not a good position. This is not as bad as Medieval Baker. Honestly, you could say Medieval anything, and, like, the average homeless person probably lives a better life. Medieval times were not fun. They could be a bit nicer if it's like a fantasy setting, so like a lot of the things that like made medieval life hell could be like answered with magical solutions. But like actual medieval times? Please, no. You've lit all lights in the Forgotten Tower. And I got another copy of Minus Transmutation, nice. I considered using it on the Gorgon boss, because it was like... Oh, it's got a silver helmet on. Yeah, basically any point in history, if you weren't like obscenely wealthy, was kind of miserable. And most points in history, even if you were obscenely wealthy, was kind of miserable compared to like, even like a low-end living today. Just running water to your house by itself is so big. Also vaccines. Like, I can see, like that's not particularly special, most people can see, but like, if not for like modern medicine, well, first of all, I'd be dead, but like if I'd somehow survived like the birth defects that probably would have killed me without modern medicine, like I would have gone blind. It's like, yeah, just there's a lot to be grateful for that we kind of just take for granted. Not to say that things can't be better. Anyway, we're gonna call it there for tonight. I think it's gonna like went in a melancholic direction, I'll call it. We're gonna call it there for the night. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it each and every time. Next scheduled stream is going to be on Wednesday. I have not decided what game it's going to be since I beat Spirit of the North. Next time that I'm playing Unepic is going to be on Friday, and it's decent odds, I presume, that I'm going to beat the game then. So we'll see. Have a wonderful night. I hope to see you again. Good night, and thank you for the head pats.